Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here and to experience a damn good juicing early in the morning. I am here with this, yes, rather eye-catching title of "It's not the size of your equipment that matters; it's what you do with it." So apologies because it's early in the morning before the watershed. But the next slide contains some images of massive throbbing machinery, which I'm sure gets everyone a bit hot around the collar in this audience. So certainly seems a bit warm in here. Look, this is amazing stuff. This is kind of cutting edge technology, much of it, and we can all appreciate from this industry just how smart, how clever, how efficient the print industry has become over the course of the last several years. And for those who've been on the outside of it, they would probably be blown away by the capabilities of some of this machinery. The reality, unfortunately, is that also they don't really care too much. And this is the sort of sad truth, and something that actually Peter mentioned at the previous juice session 2 weeks ago. And so I think the point is, it's not about the big grey boxes. It's not really about the workflow or 4,800 DPI exclamation mark, 4,000 prints per hour. These are important metrics for our industry, but they don't really resonate outside, and certainly not in a marketing context. So I think it's really important that we sort of just stop for a second, because the reality of life is that there's a theory, a worldview out there, is that sort of we're evolving into sort of these tech-obsessed beings, and the imagery that you see everywhere of young, attractive people being mesmerized by their phones, their devices, by nothing else, and certainly not anything to do with paper in the midst of it. It means there's a massive disconnect to the way that we speak about our industry and the capabilities of print. And the experiences that people have of it. And I guess my presentation this morning, brief sort of shot of wheatgrass in the morning, is to try to illustrate to you why we need to change that dialogue with our customers, and in particular with our marketing customers, because there's a world that says this is what's happening, and of course the flames have been fanned of this massively by COVID-19. Unavoidably, in the absence of any kind of physical interactions, digital ones have become predominant. And so yes, 3 or 4 years in the space of 3 or 4 months are the sort of usual metrics you hear. But don't for a second think that this means by definition that this is a proxy for the way that digital marketing should be going, because actually quite the contrary. And if I'm going to now spend a little bit of time reviewing the last 12 months of what's happened in digital marketing, what's happened in direct marketing, I hope you see that potentially there's an alternative view. And that technology is not a straight line, okay? Things that were possible in the past are no longer possible. You don't get this period, this constant curve of technology and progress. Sometimes, every now and then, things go back, and I think we're on the cusp of that with digital marketing. So let's just start at sort of what was the beginning, May 2020, in the midst of the first lockdown, when everyone else was sort of literally freaking out. ISBA and PwC finally published their long-awaited study into the programmatic supply chain, trying to find some transparency in this murky world. Programmatic marketing, for those obviously that don't know, is digital marketing generally that is conveyed through very, very smart technology, very smart data transfer, smart but arguably illegal data transfer. That basically means that when you go to a website and there's an ad on it, that ad was not predestined to be in front of you. Okay, that ad has appeared before you because you, as a audience, as a human being, have been auctioned in the split seconds that your browser sort of loads. There's this incredible infrastructure which is bidding on your audience based on your cookies and what you like and your preferences and what they know about you to put the right ad in front of you. Okay, and it's been, one of those things that's incredibly smart, equally stupid, very, very clever, and equally creepy. Okay, so let's go on. One of the findings in that study was that publishers, so when a brand spends £1 on a piece of advertising in the digital marketing space, in the programmatic marketing space, I should say, basically what happens is that half of that, so 50 pence of that, 51 pence of that, ends up in the hands of the publisher, the platform, the website, or whatever it is that's hosting that ad. And in between, there's this obviously kind of fairly murky sort of supply chain, which, where everyone's taking a slice. Now, I mean, actually, that's quite common in certain things, but the degree and the number of parties involved in this, which is part of the problem. And actually, even PwC, with its sort of forensic analysis, could not see where 15% of the revenue went. It just seems to disappear. So quite an extraordinary finding, and definitely one that sort of sent some shockwaves through the sort of industry as people sort of come to terms with what this actually went. And advertisers in particular began to face up to the fact that actually their money wasn't necessarily going in the way that they thought it was, in a transparent way. And that's because in a large measure as well, there's this huge other sort of elephant in the room, which is about ad fraud, which obviously has been growing as fast as digital marketing. And there's basically the internet is populated by robots, okay, by bots, which are driving fake views and fake websites, and ultimately, as with all things, you get what you pay for. So there seems to be this narrative is around this infinite supply of digital sort of inventory available at sort of ever decreasing kind of costs per thousand CPMs. So every time sort of it's another next cheapest because it's all automated and it's all clever and there's fractions of sort of percentages of margins, but the volume is sufficient. But you're not actually getting humans. This is the point. You're getting fake views, click farms, and all the rest of it. Okay, literally, it is the definition of pay peanuts, get monkeys. Okay, or in this case, probably pay peanuts, get scary digital killer monkeys that sort of basically are wrecking your marketing budgets. And this is how this sort of stuff is possible. So there's a famous thing: P&G cut $200 million from their digital advertising spends. No impact. I mean, it's just impossible to think that that's achievable. But the only way it is because these things were not being seen by real people. Chase Manhattan cut their reach by 99%. They reduced the number of websites they're appearing on to an optimized sort of 1%, only 12,000 websites rather than the 400,000 they've been on previously. It's not real. None of it is real. And the ICO is getting involved in this. Now, they started this process about 12 months ago. COVID blew it off course, admittedly, but they're back on the case. They need to investigate this because not only is there an awful lot of stuff going on, which is just quite frankly fraudulent and wasting people's money, marketing budgets, it's also what's been described as the biggest data breach in human history. If you look at that supply chain of all those people in the midst of this, you understand exactly how these, how many people are seeing your data, are processing your data. This is not actually allowable. This is not actually legal. So there's a huge tidal wave of regulatory activities to catch up with this. Okay, so that's what's going on from the outside. From the inside of digital marketing, there's been another seismic change in the last 12 months. Google has announced they're basically going to kill off third-party cookies. Okay, now what are third-party cookies? These are the things that basically the oil, the data that makes all of this happen, where the data gets passed from not your first-party data, but data from other sources and is shared around the internet in this murky kind of ecosystem. It's a massive deal. It could potentially kill off programmatic marketing. Google are doing it for their own advantage because they've obviously got a lot of their own data. So obviously the challenge is it puts even more control into their hands. But literally as we speak, the cookie is crumbling, and that again is a massive and seismic change for digital marketing to get to grips with. And then we get to brand trust, another thing that flared up massively in the last 12 months. Back to last summer and the Black Lives Matter campaign, there was this massive boycott of advertisers against Facebook because they weren't clamping down on some of the hate speech that was involved in this. And of course, into this year, and we had the Capitol Hill riots, which for many people exposed the issues of social media and basically saying that really they were to blame for the chaos in Washington, described as the 9/11 moment of social media. So, I mean, an extraordinary moment in time where this, popular revolution took place in the nation's capital in America. Good grief, astonishing. Those images went around the world. And the role of these underregulated tech companies was exposed really quite significantly. And it was interesting because in the kind of aftermath of that, you've got Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. People were saying there'd be forced to change. This was a tipping point. This was actually something that, so you might have expected a little bit of contrition from these platforms after this big seismic event, but no, we didn't get that. What we got was Facebook versus Australia. Most extraordinary thing played out where actually Facebook blocked news pages from Australia for a time period. And that then, of course, led to a reaction with people sort of actively promoting the deleting of your Facebook accounts. In the end, of course, Facebook actually bowed down to a nation state. But it is, again, a sign that things are beginning to change. Governments around the world should act now to dismantle monopolies that threaten journalism. Extraordinary times. Backdrop to all of this then is, of course, regulation. It's happened before in lots of other industries, like oil back in the sort of late 19th century. You know, it seems perhaps impossible that these things might happen, but they will. E-privacy is coming. In fact, actually, it's been on the statute books for ages, since GDPR, nearly 2 or 4 years ago. In actual fact, it's really moving with some momentum now as a result of all of these things. So, okay, so look, what I'm saying is the digital landscape is uncertain. This path to perfection, to this nirvana of a sort of end state of digital sort of absolutism is not where we're at. Okay, and things are happening which are interrupting that and challenging that. And it is, as I say, like a big brat, basically being finally forced to kind of grow up and look after itself and deal in a way that other businesses deal with. And it's interesting when you see this. You see it sort of just very recently with Uber. You know, it's easy to get ahead when you don't have to play by everyone else's rules, when you don't have to pay holiday pay to your workers. But, you know, things catch up with you. Regulation will catch up with you. And this is where we're at now. We're at this tipping point, I think. And what's happened in direct marketing over the last 12 months has been really equally extraordinary. From the initial seismic shock of Q2 last year, the first lockdown, when everybody collapsed in a sort of spasm of I don't know what and cancelled everything. We've built back very, very strongly. The resilience of this channel is extraordinary. And it's all of these other issues, brand trust issues and other things, are beginning to focus people's attentions on some of the key things that digital has and how that compares with print. So if you look at this example, you've got digital being so much cheaper than print. But when you look at what you're buying for your money, you're buying an attention span of 6.9 days on average. You're buying, so much more opportunity to see and so much more content in terms of space. So it changes the whole metrics around how much things actually cost. And our industry body, Jigmail, which looks after our sort of audience numbers, has reported some extraordinary peaks in metrics throughout 2020. Much greater efficiency, much greater effectiveness. And we've seen that ourselves, mapped out with our campaigns. We've seen an absolutely staggering impact to campaigns, best ever performance in 2020, year-on-year improvement going through the sort of the iterations of how you work your response rates to the optimum. Things are working well, and the online space in the last 12 months has really embraced print as well, and seeing great uplifts, return on media of 9 to 1. I mean, amazing. Now, where can you get this? There are sources of insight and inspiration all across the industry. You can go to the Jigmail website, to the Market Reach website, to even to our website, and there's case studies and there's stories, there's white papers, there's all sorts of information available to you which can help you tell a different story about the output of these machines. So when people ask you what you produce, you could say, instead of so many DPIs, so many dots per minute, so many copies per minute, it's about the results, about the inspiration, about the performance, about the return on investment. So to cap it all, repeat after me, ROI, not DPI. Thank you.